The first time I used JUnit, I was working with Kent Beck. I had flown out to Medford, Oregon. The year was probably 1999, and he and I did some pair programming on a simple little application, just so that he could show me test-driven development and JUnit, and I was floored. Not so much by JUnit. JUnit was obviously a very simple application, but by the power of the discipline and how fluid and useful the tool was. Ever since then, that's just changed the way I've done everything. JUnit in particular has been the test tool that I have used by default. And what a beautiful concept.
Evolving JUnit is difficult. Here is a simple example. You can see a failing test case and how it's being reported in IntelliJ. The difference between expected text and the actual string can be easily spotted. Let's go for a simple and presumably safe change to JUnit, this time using Eclipse. We want to get rid of the ancient F prefix for private member fields. This should have no effects at all on any external users of JUnit. As a next step, we run a complete rebuild of JUnit using Maven. When running the failing test from before with a freshly built version of JUnit, it turns out the integration with the IDE is broken now. Those kind of pesky little problems can be found in many flavors. This hampers both the maintenance of the code base and makes life hard for IDE and tool builders. That's why one of the main goals of this campaign is to provide a sufficient and stable API for running tests and reporting test results. This API will be deployed to a separate jar and thus be only loosely coupled to the rest of JUnit.
So one of the first things that struck me about using JUnit all those years ago was the simplicity, just getting on with it. Compared to all the frameworks I'd come across, there was very little ritual. You could actually just focus on the tests. And that is what made it ubiquitous.
Hey folks, this is JBrains coming at you with a little message about JUnit. It's no exaggeration to say that I owe my career to JUnit. There were a few weeks in 2001 when everyone seemed to be complaining that there was no good JUnit tutorial, and that led me to write JUnit, a starter guide. A few years later, that became JUnit recipes, and, well, the rest is history. I love that in spite of getting new features over the years, the core of JUnit has really remained this ultra-simple framework that just runs tests and counts what's been run. And that's, I think, one of the keys to JUnit's success, is that it really captures the essence of what a good framework should be. And no matter how the Java language changes, no matter how the Java landscape changes, by staying tiny, JUnit will remain the standard for testing in Java. So you should really give JUnit all your money. Can you think of any other piece of software that's given you so much, that's asked for so little?
Let's look at a severe limitation of JUnit 4's runner construct. Here we have a simple class called login service with a single method called login. The method takes two parameters, an account ID along with a password. It uses the account repository to look up the account and performs a bunch of checks. If all of them succeed, it marks the account as logged in. This is a typical scenario for interaction-based testing using a mocking library. In this case, we adopt Mockito, which provides a custom runner to instantiate mocks and to inject them into the login service. We have a few tests here. The first test prepares the account repository to return an account, as well as the account to have a matching password. After calling logged in, we expect the account to be logged in. The second test case does prepare the account to have a non-matching password and expects an illegal argument exception to be thrown. The third test checks that if account repository does not find an account, it will throw an exception with the corresponding message. Let's assume we wanted to repeat those test cases for other account ID password combinations. We could do that using the parameterized test runner. In this example, we provide one additional pair of account ID and password. The runner will inject the parameters into the annotated fields. We'd also like to use the functionality provided by Mockito's runner. JUnit, however, does only support a single runner per test class. Therefore, we cannot use both at the same time. Fortunately, in this very case, a solution exists. Mockito is kind enough to also provide a test rule that offers the same functionality. Other runners, though, for instance the one provided by Spring to enable container-based testing, are not available as rules. Therefore, we wouldn't be able to escape JUnit's shortcoming as easily.
I'm James Shore, author of The Art of Agile Development and host of Let's Code Test-Driven JavaScript. I got my start with test-driven development and extreme programming in 2000, and the tool that was there to teach it to me was JUnit. I've learned so much from test-driven development. It's something that I still continue to discover new things about how I can program and how I can make my code maintainable. I feel like test-driven development is really a vital part of creating high-quality, maintainable designs that are going to not just be easy to use now, but will continue to be maintainable for years into the future. JUnit is a piece of vital infrastructure. It's foundational to my experience with test-driven development and to many other people's. And that is why I am proud to support this Kickstarter.
So, what would I like to see in JUnit in future? I'd like to see a more declarative approach to handling data-driven tests, so I can drive more example data through individual cases. I'd also like to see a more declarative approach, an easier approach to dealing with property-based tests. And clearly better integration with Java 8, for example, use of lambdas to be able to assert on given exceptions as they're thrown rather than having to describe the whole method at that level.
Please fund these young whippersnappers, keeping JUnit young, just like me.